Welcome to the Sheridan Report, brought to you by bookie.ag on the Gruely Drew Sports Network. I am your host for the Sheridan Report, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I would like to welcome in my co-host, Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Mike, I'm doing great this morning, enjoying the games already, and we got some good ones to get out here too.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get this started because I know you got something here at the top of the hour, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, noon Pacific, that you want to talk about.
We do. It's 11:39 Pacific, Mike, and we've got a game coming up at 12 that's a top play, and the fans and listeners that were privy to our conversation yesterday are probably not going to be surprised by this. We're coming right back with USC today in the Pac-12 conference. They played in this time slot yesterday, had a really impressive win over Arizona, and they're coming right back to play the top seed Washington, which you and I talked about was a team that could be upset in this tournament. And if any team could do it, it's USC today. USC matches up really well. Washington's strength, they have two strengths. They have a good tandem on the front court of Noel and Dickerson, and they have a standout guard who's more of a defensive slasher type guard. He'll make an NBA roster next year. Being a defensive player, he's long. SC matches up well. Their inside players of Boatwright and the European name Rusminovic, something like that, are going to be able to give problems to Noel and Dickerson. So from a matchup perspective, it's very good. SC is the upset special. They're being led by Boatwright, a senior who can get his own shot whenever he really wants to. You know, he's long, he's tall, he's a 6'10" that shoots the three very well. Best three-point shooter probably in the conference, especially for his size, and he's been getting 5 a game. They're going to be able to score today. And so anyhow, we've got really a good line on USC. I've hit 7 of the last 8 Pac-12 games. Washington's last 4 games, they've lost 2 and then won 2 close ones, 1 by 5 and 1 by 1. So I believe teams are playing them better and are understanding how to play them better. And turnovers are really the key. If USC cannot turn the ball over today and not have trouble in that category, they have a great shot to win this game. They're getting 5, and I like them with the points and on the money line at plus $1.90.
All right. What else you got for today?
And that game's at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, so that's why we gave it out first. Well, what else we got today? I'm not going to talk too much about this one. I was going to give it away. Seton Hall tonight in the Big East at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 Eastern. It's a late start on the East Coast. Seton Hall plays Georgetown. That's a classic matchup in Madison Square Garden, and I like Seton Hall in that game. They were started 2.5. It's up to 3.5. I think you can lay 3.5 or 4. That'd be about as high as I'd want to go. You can get it at 3.5 right now. I like Seton Hall in that game. We had Ohio State this morning. We'll see if that holds on.
74-69. Ohio State's up with 18.9 seconds left, and they have the ball. IU looked like they had a 3-point play, but Big Ten officials suck ass. So go ahead.
Oh, well. All right, so it looks like Ohio State might hold on for it. So we had Ohio State.
Yeah, game's over. Ohio State just dunked 76-69, so you get the win on that.
Okay, very good. We got the win. And it's important to – and I'm sorry to the Indiana faithful. I know there are a lot out that listen to the Gruely Truth, and I've been on them very well betting for them. And it's one of those teams that I just had a read on it. Whether I took them or went against them, I was right all year. And it's just kind of one of those things. And you have teams like that, and I was worried about that, them playing with there's a lot of pressure on them today, and I didn't like how the game was unfolding. I liked it much better for Ohio State, and that's why you have to follow me on the Twitter, because I put that out on the free play this morning. That was on the Twitter at probably 7:30 or 8 o'clock this morning, and of course it was on the report if you bought it last night. So that's why it's important to follow me at Sheridan Report. I do a lot of free stuff on there. So anyhow, let's go to the rest of the card today. Basically, the rest of the card is going to entail me talking about an NBA game that I like tonight. And sometimes these NBA games are just inexplicable. You know, yesterday's Detroit game is inexplicable. They're down by 5 at half, and they get outscored 20-0 to start the third period. And it's a game they want to win, a game they were totally invested in. So you just don't know what's going to happen. But one thing we do know, Indiana Pacers at home are a great always a great bet. This team plays as hard and as well coordinated as any team in the league. They're not as talented as a lot of the other clubs. We've talked about that in the Grueling Truth, but they play as well and as hard and are as coached as well as any team in the league. And they have a big ball game tonight. And let me tell you why it's a big game. After this game, they go on a road trip to the West Coast, and they're going to play 4 teams on the West Conference, all in the playoffs. Okay, their next 8 opponents are all playoff-bound teams. So they have a stretch of games coming up on the road that are going to be difficult. And Indiana is really trying to hold on to a top 4 seeding for obvious reasons. And they'd even like to get a 3rd seed, stay away from Boston in that first round. I think they'd much rather play Detroit or Brooklyn. So they're tied with Philly in the 4th spot. This is a big game. This is one of 2 matchups over the next 2 weeks. So we're gonna be on this matchup. We're gonna watch very closely tonight. And they play OKC home tonight, and they go to OKC on the 27th of March. Best bet is that this would probably be a split series. That's what typically happens with these East-West Coast teams at this level. I rank them about the same level in terms of strength going into the playoffs, in terms of ranking. And I think Indiana has a really good shot to get this game at home. You talk about leadership. Nate McMillan, he said, he had a quote yesterday. He says, you're all commenting on our schedule coming up. We know what we've got coming up. We're going to be okay. And he said that emphatically. And Nate McMillan's just a great leader. And they're Miles Turner. He also had another really good comment, regarding Paul George coming back in. He said, look, the fans and the media are all making a big deal about Paul George coming back in. It's just another game for us, but it's another important game. We have to take care of business. They'll be ready tonight. The other night was a letdown spot for them against the Knicks. They played like it. They played up well enough to win, like they always do, and they're going to play more than well enough to win tonight with the home court and the home cooking. So we really like Indiana -1 over OKC tonight at home. That's the NBA top play.
All right, we got anything else for today?
Yeah, I had a late ad in the ATP. We're down to the quarterfinals now. In these tournaments, you got all the big boys are usually around, and we talked about Djokovic getting upset, but we still got Nadal and Federer sitting right there. And so, in these quarterfinal matchups, they're very rarely going to lose in these spots, so we don't really have a play. But we did find one spot tonight. It's a night match at 7 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock, right in that time range. I think 7 o'clock is what they've listed it for. It may go a little later. 10 o'clock on the East, so another late start. If you need to get bailout or you need something to watch tonight or bet on, Dominic Thiem tonight, plus $1.30 against Gail Monfils. And it's on court 1, center court, and it's going to be a very good match. And he is extremely capable of handling Monfils, who's been a monster the last 2 or 3 tournaments, and he's physically very gifted. But Dominic Thiem will be in that match hugely tonight. It'll go 3 sets, and so I believe that Thiem has a really good shot at plus $1.30 tonight in the ATP, and that's our only ATP selection.
All right, so is that it for today on the betting end?
Yeah, I think that's basically it, Mike. I don't think there's anything else to really go over too much there, but I did have some on this day I wanted to talk about.
Well, before you do that, let's go ahead and catch our commercial from mybookie.ag, and we will get on that in 1 minute. Hi, I'm Mike Goodpaster from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with mybookie.ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on. And that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out mybookie.ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on mybookie.ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now, and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50, that's TGT50, to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net, Click the banner at the top of the page for mybookie.ag and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit mybookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. All right, guys, we're back on the Sheridan Report by brought to you by mybookie.ag. Remember, you can go to thegruelingtruth.net, click on the mybookie.ag banner at the top of the page to get up to a $1,000 free cash bonus. Ohio State 79, Indiana 75. Had a little controversy where the Big Ten, I think, screwed something up at the end again. But let's go ahead. You want to start off with 1980 or 1981, Bobby?
Let's start off with 1981, Mike.
Okay.
And on this day in the NCAA, St. Joseph's upset top seed DePaul. Now, I don't know anything about this, but my mind is going back to Mark Aguirre. Was he around at this time?
Yeah, that was the Mark Aguirre team, and that was actually the DePaul team that in 1979 they went to the Final Four, and they lost by a point or two to Larry Bird in the Final Four up at Salt Lake City. Had a great team, and you go ahead, you fast forward, 1981, this is the number one seeded in tournament. St. Joe's at the time was the number 9 seed in the Midwest bracket. They had to play a play-in game against the Creighton Blue Jays. They beat Creighton at the buzzer 59-57. They come out and they play DePaul, the number 1 seed, and they played the slowdown game. There was no shot clock, no three-point line. And at the buzzer, John Smith hits a shot to beat DePaul 49-48. But the upsets don't stop there because then they go to Assembly Hall and they play Boston College. Boston College was the number 5 seed. They were a Big East team. They'd beaten, I think, Wake Forest right before that. And actually, only the top 4 seeds got by. So BC played a first-round game against Ball State. And Ball State had a guy by the name of Dan Palambizio, who was from Michigan State Rogers in Indiana. I think he was Mr. Basketball in like 1979 or 1980. And Ball State damn near beats Boston College. Boston College beats them 93-90. I think this was still Boston College with Michael Adams, who I don't know if you remember Michael Adams or not, but a little dude that could tear it up. Yeah, he was a hell of a player.
Doubt.
And then they came out.
NBA.
Yeah, and then they came out, played the number 4 seed Wake Forest, beat them 67-64. So you've got a Sweet 16 of St. Joseph's against Boston College. And St. Joseph, once again, hits a shot at the end of the game to win the game 42-41 over Boston College. And then they go play in the Elite Eight, and this is playing Indiana at Assembly Hall in the Elite Eight. That was the Isaiah Thomas team, Mike Woodson, Ray Tolbert, Landon Turner, Randy Whitman, Ted Kitchell. The team was loaded. Indiana blew them out 78-46. But the interesting thing here, we've talked to Steve Risley before, who played the 81 team. This was maybe one of the most upset-ridden tournaments in NCAA history because when you look ahead at this and you see this, UAB was the number 7 seed, and the number 2 seed in this bracket was Kentucky. And Kentucky got upset by UAB 69-62, and that UAB team was really good. Gene Bartow was the head coach. He was the guy who took over immediately after Adolph Rupp in 1976 UCLA. Actually took UCLA to the Final Four, lost by like 16 points to IU. Then he left. He goes to UAB, starts a program from scratch, and like in 5 years, he's beaten Kentucky in the tournament, and he's playing Indiana at Indiana in the Sweet 16. And if you watch all of IU's games in that run, UAB lost 87-72 to him, but UAB was probably the most competitive with him. But then, of course, Indiana blows out St. Joseph's 78-46. So St. Joseph was a 9 seed that made it all the way to the Elite Eight. And
Wow.
if you look at them, they won by 2, 3. The 3 games they won by a total of 4 points. And they beat the number 1 and the number 5 seed as the number 9. So really, I think it's one of the great Cinderella stories in NCAA history.
Wow, it sure is. And that really, Indiana not having to play DePaul, that was a big boost for them too,
Yeah.
That would have been an unbelievable.
Well, actually, the
game.
big thing is this: they would have had to play Kentucky in the Sweet 16 and DePaul in the Elite Eight. Now, I think the way IU played that year, IU wins it anyways, but it doesn't hurt to, get those two knocked off and not have to play against them.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, they beat North Carolina, who we know was the real deal. And, and not to say they wouldn't have beat anyways, but that's a much tougher road, and especially when you just have to beat Kentucky before having to play DePaul.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And Aguirre went on, and I think the Clippers drafted him, and he had a really good career later with Detroit. And, he was a hell of a player. And that was coached by Ray Meyer, correct?
Yeah, which was a man who was a really good coach, but for some reason never could get it done. He only got to the Final Four once. And if you look at him even after that, up through 1984, they're a top 2 or 3 seed almost every year, and every year they get beat. I think 82 they were ranked 1 for a lot of the year and came up short in the tournament. I think they lost in the second round. I know 1980, I think they were like the 2 seed overall in the tournament, and they got upset by Kiki Vandeweghe and UCLA, who went on to play in a national championship game against Louisville. And then I think his final year was 1984, and I think in 84 he lost to, you remember Muggsy Bogues, Tyrone Bogues?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Tyrone Bogues played for Wake Forest, and I think Wake Forest was they were a lower seed to DePaul. DePaul played Wake Forest in the Sweet 16. Wake Forest upset them. I think that was Ray Meyer's last game. Wake Forest went on to lose to that Houston Cougar team in the Elite Eight. I think it was like 68-63 in Kemper Arena in Kansas. But yeah, so Ray Meyer's biggest problem was he had some great teams, but he never could get over the hump. And the one time he got to the Final Four, he runs into Larry Bird, who I think went for like a triple-double, including 38 points. And still, DePaul loses the game at the buzzer. So,
yeah,
DePaul used to be a great program, and people don't realize that. The problem is now, I think DePaul's starting to come back a little bit. They were a little bit better this year, but until they can recruit the Chicago area's best players, they're always going to be an afterthought in the Big East.
Yeah. Wow. All right, Mike, I got another one if we have time.
We got time.
Good. 1980. We're going back a year earlier than 81, so we're going to 1980. I have a blurb here written down. I didn't know anything about this. Polish airliner crash kills all 87 aboard. 22 are U.S. amateur boxers.
Yeah, the interesting thing there is I've interviewed guys before, like Alex Ramos was supposed to be on the plane, but he upset Mike McCallum, who later went on to be like the middleweight champion or super middleweight champion of the world. And because he upset him, he did not go on the plane and ended up, fighting in the championship round of a tournament, or his ass would have been going to Poland. And there's probably like 4 or 5 stories of guys that I've talked to. You talked about Joe Frazier's son, Marvis. Marvis Frazier and Bobby Ches, who ended up being a famous fighter, were supposed to be on that trip, but missed it for whatever reason. And there's like stories from like 5 or 6 guys that were supposed to be on the trip, didn't make the trip. And the other thing about the 1980 Olympic team was you had a guy by the name of Sarge Johnson, who was a great Olympic boxing coach who died on top of the 22 fighters. Probably the best fighter on there was Lemuel Steeples. He was a great young boxer who I think could have been a world champion someday. Another notable name on that was Paul Palomino. And if you've ever heard of Carlos Palomino, the former welterweight champion, Paul Palomino was his brother. And once again, I interviewed Carlos Palomino at one point. You can go on to grillingtruth.net, search it, hear the interview there. But the thing that makes everything like a double tragedy here is these guys were flying and doing these events overseas because they were trying to get ready for the 1980 Moscow Olympics. And when it all came to the end there was no 1980 Olympics for the American boxing team or for the American team at all. And you had a boxing team that was really good, and you had guys that it cost them a lot of money for there not to be an Olympic boxing team. Because if you look back to 1976 and the kind of money, let's do a comparison. Aaron Pryor, who was a great fighter, right? His first fight, right. He lost in the 76 Olympic trials in the finals. Now, his first fight as a professional, he made $400. Sugar Ray Leonard, who won the Olympic gold medal, his first fight made $400,000. So I've interviewed guys that were on the 80 Olympic boxing team, like Johnny Bump City Bumpus, who went on to be a champion. But, his first fight, it was nationally televised, but with no Olympic gold medal, he makes $5,000. I mean, you're looking, if they have the 1980 Moscow Olympics, you probably got 3 or 4 guys that would have made that team, that would have won gold medals, and it would have changed their lives. And instead, what you get is this. You get guys that end up getting shortchanged.
Yes. Wow.
Wouldn't it?
Crazy, fate, how it turns out and how it changes everything,
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the thing is, it's something that never needed to happen. And if you look at the 80 Olympic boxing team, you did have guys that went on to win world championships, like Richie Sandoval. Let me think. Bernard Taylor didn't win one, but he got close. Johnny Bumpus, Donald Curry. And Donald Curry was a guy that at one point in 1984, after he knocked out Milton McCrory, he was considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. If you give him an Olympic gold medal and he's starting his career at the end of 80 or early 1981, he's millions of dollars ahead when he starts off. You had James Black Gold Schuler, who actually fought Tommy Hearns and got knocked out in one round. And then a couple months later, he was only like 26, 27 years old. He got in a motorcycle accident, I think it was in 1986, and died. You had Leroy Murphy, who actually was an IBF cruiserweight champion. James Broad, who was a heavyweight. But the way these guys' lives could have been changed if they would have, fought in the Olympics and won a medal is, off the hook what they could have done. And you get a guy like Tom Sarge Johnson, who died in that plane crash. He was a coach on the 1976 Olympic team with Howard Davis, Sugar Ray Leonard, Michael Spanks, Leon Spanks, that great team from 76, what I think, if it's not the best Olympic boxing team of all time, it's the second best behind 1984 with Holyfield, Whitaker, Taylor, and all those guys. But it's just sad that in the end, these guys weren't going to get a chance to fight for an Olympic gold medal anyways because of politics. Right. And politics and sports don't go together, and they're absolute bullshit. And the sad thing is, when you talk to a Johnny Bumpus who's kind of down on his luck today, and he just starts bringing up, what it could have been as opposed to what was. I mean, it's sad, and there was no reason for it. And a lot of these guys started boxing when they were 4 and 5 years old and had fought 16 to 20 years working to win an Olympic gold medal, and then it was taken away by for an absolutely stupid reason by President Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, it seems like boxing and tragedy go hand in hand too, doesn't it? I mean, it just seems like
it seems that sports tragedies do. I mean, you had the Humboldt junior hockey team. You've seen the movie We Are Marshall. You got the Marshall Thundering Herd. Here's one I don't know if you know about it or not, but 1977, the Evansville Purple Aces basketball team.
I don't know.
I'll have to get you some information on that. But Chris Cook and Alan Buck, who did Game Day IQ, lived down in Evansville. And there was a documentary made about it you can find on YouTube. That was another plane crash, killed the entire team. And
I'll look that up.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting story. And when you look at it, I mean, hell, Bobby, tragedies happen to everybody. Everybody dies.
Yeah. It's trying to put myself back in that time in 1980. After that happened, what type of thing was going on? Like, was there a remembrance of them? Was there a big?
I don't remember much. I know they ran some newspaper articles. The reason I knew so well about it was because I was a huge boxing fan. The thing that's interesting, is actually the country of Poland built a monument to that team with all the players' names on it and everything, which was something they didn't have to do, and I think that was nice. And the thing is, people don't realize how big amateur boxing used to be. I mean, amateur boxing, you're about my age. I mean, if you wanted to
Yeah.
watch amateur boxing, they would usually have like the U.S. against Cuba, or the U.S. against the Soviet Union, or the U.S. against the world. And guys like Alex Ramos, who's a friend of the show with the Retired Boxers Foundation, was one of the best amateur middleweights I ever saw. And he could tell you, I mean, when they fought the Golden Gloves in New York City, it was in the main room at Madison Square Garden, and there was 20,000 people packed in there to watch it. And I remember watching guys like Alex Ramos, Sugar Ray Leonard, Howard Davis, watching them as amateur boxers on live network TV. And that's why, if you look at boxing in the early 1960s took a big hit when Biddy the Kid Perrette died, in a title fight against Emil Griffith, which I think we've brought up before on one of these shows before. But it kind of died out. You had Ali kind of picked it up. And as crazy as this seems, the Rocky movie with Sylvester Stallone really made it take off, because I can't tell you the countless amount of boxers who are around our age that started boxing the next day after they saw the Rocky movie.
They saw Rocky. Wow.
Yeah. And then you had the 76 Olympic boxing team. And the thing about that is, if you remember 76, the 84 Olympic boxing teams both had this, where ABC would do like a little 5-minute feature telling you about these guys' lives before every time they fought. So you had a dog in the fight with these guys. You knew who they were. You knew what made them tick. They made you like these guys. They make you care about these guys. We don't have that anymore because amateur boxing in the United States has basically went to shit. So when you look at it, that's why boxing has dropped off so far, because of the lack of free TV. And I think the biggest thing is the amateur boxing program and how far it's dropped off.
Yeah. Great stuff, Mike. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'd like to go back on the Grilling Truth, and I don't BS, me, I really mean this. I'd like to go back to the Grilling Truth, and I'd like to listen. I'm sure you have a couple taped podcasts on there with Ramos. I'm sure you do, right? Talking about his time there.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Heck, I could even get Alex on this show someday if you want. Talk to him for 5 or 10 minutes.
That'd be great. I'd love to. Maybe we could do that around a big boxing match where we're talking about it. You know what I mean?
We got a huge boxing match this weekend.
Oh, we do? Who's coming up?
Errol Spence, Mikey Garcia. It'll be in front of about 50,000 people at the Cowboys Stadium on pay-per-view. 2 of the top 10 fighters in the world.
Is that Saturday, Mike?
Yeah, that's on Saturday.
Okay, can we get Ramos on Friday and we'll do 10 minutes with him?
We can do that, or maybe even Saturday morning.
Okay, either one. Yeah, Saturday morning. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll figure it out either way. And I mean, I can tell you this: if we're getting Alex on, it's going to be more than 10 minutes. And if Alex, I know he listens to everything I tag him in, and Alex, that was actually a compliment, because Alex is one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. I mean, he's a great heart. He has a lot to do with the Retired Boxers Foundation, him and Jackie Richardson, to help boxers that are down and out and need help. But yeah, I'll see if we can get him on. We'll get him on at some point, no matter what. But, all right,
sounds good, Mike.
Make sure you check out mybookie.ag. Click on the banner at thegruelingtruth.net. Let's see. And we will be back with Survive in Advance tomorrow, Friday. We didn't do it today because Indiana was playing, and I wanted to watch it, and that was stupid. But we will be back with the Sheridan Report also tomorrow, right between 2 and 2:30, live on thegruelingtruth.net. So we're going to wrap it up for today. I want to remind everybody you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.